shocking statement. Ukraine didn't just hit Russia's fuel. Its drones redrew Russia's air defense map. One refinery strike reportedly cut Moscow's fuel supply by about 40%, and suddenly high-end S-400 batteries weren't guarding the front, they were babysitting oil. In this video, you'll see how beaver-class drones, decoys, and frequency-hopping tactics forced Russia into costly choices. We'll break down the multi-wave raids, how expensive interceptors chase cheap signatures, and why those redeployments matter more than the fires on camera. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How does a capital wrapped in layered S-400s run short on fuel? That's the paradox that cracked open when the refinery belt around Moscow turned from an afterthought into a priority target. The city that felt beyond reach relied on an assumption: overlapping radars, panzer batteries on rooftops, and a command loop fast enough to catch anything crossing the boundary. Critical infrastructure sat under this umbrella, which gave leaders and civilians the sense that deep strikes might rattle windows, but not core supply. Then a refinery's western section burned for days, and the claim of a hit that cut Moscow's fuel supply by roughly 40% landed like a wrench in the gears. A blaze is dramatic, but the real story is how a fire at a single complex can bleed into rail schedules, tanker routing, and reserve drawdowns. Refineries are soft power nodes because they cannot move, they radiate heat, and the equipment that makes them efficient also makes them fragile. Shut one down, and you don't just lose output. You scramble the network that keeps trucks, patrol units, and generators fed. The mini-story starts with noise. A first wave of decoys, some carrying corner reflectors, floated in and lit up scopes with cheap, bright returns. Operators on Panzer consoles saw targets that looked clean and simple to classify. S-400 crews fed the track data and launched on what their screens told them were threats. Those interceptors cost real money. Each shot spent minutes of reload time and chunks of a finite magazine. While crews worked through false tracks, the second wave, small UAS with modest signatures, rode the gap. Here's where the research-backed edge comes in. Cost asymmetry decides pace. A low-cost UAS burns a fraction of the resources that an interceptor does, and it consumes more than missiles. It drains attention, it forces radar modes to switch, and it pushes command posts to prioritize sectors. Every time a crew fires, they accept reloads and blind spots. Every time they hold fire, they gamble on a real strike slipping through. Jamming did not save the day. Frequency-hopping links kept command alive when the air went dirty, bouncing channels to dodge noise. When links did break, inertial navigation carried drones on pre-programmed paths, steady enough to land inside tolerances that matter at refinery scale. They flew profiles that stayed below thresholds that trigger hard classifications, then popped up or dived when a fence in the software opened for a moment, a classifier missed one, a handoff lagged on another, and the route to the western units stayed open long enough. The visible fire was the headline, but the damage lived in spreadsheets. Fuel allocation officers had to reshuffle deliveries. Convoys queued for turns at depots that suddenly ran lean. Mobilization got sticky as units waited for shipments diverted to keep high-priority services running. Export flows already under pressure saw more friction, and the feeders that keep a capital humming started to grind. The strike pulled Moscow's supply lines into a bend that no one planned for, and exposed how air defense can protect buildings while leaving process nodes to fate. That's the mini payoff. The refinery raid didn't just burn barrels, it shook confidence in a shield that looked airtight on paper. It revealed that the dome has seams where software, human judgment, and reload times meet. And once those seams opened, fuel stopped being a background function and became the center of gravity. If the capital had to look inward to keep gas moving, what did that do to the guard at the front? What could make a country pull billion-dollar defenses away from the front? Fuel fires did what artillery couldn't. Once energy nodes started taking hits, the calculus shifted. A refinery is not a trophy target, it's a heartbeat. Guard it or accept shortages. That is the trap. The drone trap is simple and brutal. Keep striking oil, gas, and heavy industry across a wide map until the only answer is to move S-400S and Panzers to ring those sites. Do that long enough and the front thins, not by choice but by arithmetic. The map widened fast. Raids did not come from one direction or even one region. They stretched from Moscow's defensive belt to Dagestan and Crimea, with reported strikes as far as Siberia. Each axis forced a separate set of radars to watch, hand off, and engage. Crews chased false tracks while reload crews raced timers. You can guard a city. Guarding a country the size of a continent is a different fight. The more lines of approach, the more windows appear in coverage, especially when operators juggle maintenance cycles and shifting threat sectors. The toolset matched the mission. Beaver-class and UJ-22 drones showed up with believable radar signatures and the kind of profiles that mess with prediction. Corner reflectors boosted returns to look like faster, larger targets, drawing fire early. UJ-22S flew dynamic altitude bands, sliding between roughly 40 and 80 meters, which turns a straight intercept into a guess about where the drone will be when the gun lays on. Add in altitude modulation near terrain, short dives and low runs behind clutter, and classification logic starts to wobble. Even a good radar picture needs time, and time is exactly what the decoys steal. Defenders face the classic dilemma every minute: engage the bright returns and burn interceptors, or hold fire and dare a real strike to pass. Both choices punch holes in the shield. Firing drains magazines and creates reload gaps that smart attackers will exploit. Holding fire saves missiles, but risks letting genuine threats slip into terminal approach. Either way, coverage sectors go soft. That is the point of the trap: shape behavior until defending the refinery belt becomes the priority, and the front becomes a secondary concern. On one of the heavy nights, Russian batteries reportedly ripped through rapid-fire volleys, dozens of E6-class missiles or a similar SAM load, chasing mixed signatures that kept changing speed and altitude. Strike drones waited on the edge for those reload windows, then ran the lanes when launchers went cold. This is choreography, not luck. The timing only has to be right once to land a hit on an energy node that cannot move or hide. The research-backed effect showed up on the map. Air defense geography changed. S-400s and Pantsers that once formed deep layers near contested fronts shifted to refinery belts and industrial clusters. Each reassignment meant fewer long-range shots available at the line of contact. With fewer interceptors overhead, Ukrainian drones and missiles met less resistance on the approach. Logistics felt it too. Fuel disruptions slowed truck columns and depot turnarounds, turning distance inside Russia into a liability instead of a buffer. That is the first payoff. Drones reached hundreds to over 1,000 kilometers, not because they grew faster, but because the radars and missiles that would have stopped them were watching pipelines and cracking units. They slid through seams opened by redeployments, reloads, and attention splits. If geography now works against the defender, the next question is simple and expensive. Do you harden every energy node, or accept thinner coverage where the fighting is hottest? The fires were a lure. The real effect landed in strategy. Cheap drones forced costly shifts and turned Russia's depth into a burden. With refinery belts under pressure, air defenses moved, and every redeployment opened seams elsewhere. That trade-off keeps compounding. Watch what happens next. Does Russia harden energy nodes with concrete nets and more short-range guns, or accept thinner protection at the front? Subscribe for data-backed updates as this contest evolves and budgets chase attrition. When fuel, air defense, and distance collide, the decisive move may occur far from trenches, out where a single depot, a rail spur, or a relay tower sets the tempo.